Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Family Photographs, establishing parental dominance since 1841. Now, let's dim the lights and say cheese.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Cosa Nostra Pizza. Your pizza delivered within 30 minutes or else. Cosa Nostra Pizza. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And this is our podcast where we like to discuss films and break them apart. See why they work the way they do. What can we learn about writing, storytelling, filmmaking? And of course, we're coming at this from the perspective of filmmakers ourselves. A full-time writer, director, and all-hand one-man band. Todd's a full-time producer and soon to be full-time musician. I see that in your future. And man, I've never listened to a lot of audiobooks. I listen to a ton of podcasts. Swallowed a bug. Sorry, that's a Good Will Hunting reference. I listened to, I think, my first full audiobook this past week, and I was listening to, I don't even remember the title of it, but it's like the Netflix book about their company culture. It's written by Reed Hastings, and God, I keep forgetting her name. Erin Meyer, because it's a really good book and she deserves to have her name said out loud. And I'm just floored by what they're doing over there. I feel like it's everything that you and I would appreciate. They have like so many differences between what you experience in normal company culture. There's a lot of freedom, and I guess it depends on, and they make a big point of this at the end of the book, of what your goal is, right? If you're running a nuclear reactor, you probably don't want a culture of free thinking individuals. You want people who follow processes and are very adherent to that in order to minimize failure and catastrophe. But if your focus isn't preventing failure and catastrophe, and your focus is innovation and forward thinking and trying to come up with the next big thing, then you need a lot of people who are able to flex those muscles. And so their corporate culture is all about creating an environment where you trust your employees to make decisions with minimal oversight. And they go through step by step how they built that culture, where it came from. They talk about high density talent. So you let go of people who are adequate in favor of people who are excellent and forward thinking, who take risks. They want people who gamble and are willing to take a big bet. And if they fail, that they'll learn something from it. Failure is okay. It's learned from. It's not punished. Because obviously if you punish failure, then all you're going to do is discourage innovation. And so, and a thousand other ways that they go about this. And so I'm just, floored. And it certainly explains why they have such a wide array of content, stuff that's like awful, right? They release a lot of stuff, and that's subjective too. I guess it's awful to me because I don't watch whatever reality shows and kids programming or whatever. And it also speaks to how willing they are to just take risks. Someone believes in someone else, like, oh, hey, I like this filmmaker. I want to take a risk. And so I guess I'm saying all this because I was also watching there was a show that popped up on my radar a week or two ago, and it's called Archive 81, and it hit all the right buttons visually. I was like, oh, it's sci-fi and it's kind of creepy. Looks like there's a lot of tension. Yeah, I'll add it to my list. And then I went back to watching all the other shows that I wanted to watch on other streaming services, HBO mostly. And then after we watched Don't Look Up, I was like, oh, Archive 81 is still in my playlist. So I hit play, started watching it, and was just in it. And the reason why I added it to my list at all, really beyond just kind of the visual elements, was the lead actor I really like, and I've been wanting to see more from him. It's the black guy at the beginning in that movie, Underwater. And I'm going to butcher his name. And this is why you say all the cast every episode is for the reason I can't pronounce his name. Is Mahmoud Athi, I think. I'm sure there's a better way to pronounce that. But I saw him in it and I was like, oh, I'd love to see, you know, what he's got in the tank. And he is just so watchable. He's such a good actor. But it wasn't until the third episode that I discovered that it was created by two of my favorite filmmakers, actually, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who I've talked about Spring once or twice on the show, and maybe even Synchronic and The Endless. So I just really love kind of the vision and the way these guys are always thinking. And so getting pulled into that show was really fun. I was like, oh man, it must be really nice to collaborate as a creative artist with someone that, like Netflix, who values autonomy and independence and free thinking and even pushback. Like their culture has a big culture of candor. So if Reed Hastings, whatever the CEO or president, whatever his position is, or Ted Sarandos, you know, the founder, if one of these guys is in the middle of a meeting saying something and someone doesn't agree with it, they'll speak up and they'll say in the middle of the meeting, hey, Reed, you're botching this report. You keep quoting this report, but those aren't the numbers. You're talking about this other thing, man. He's like, no, Reed, you're getting it wrong, man. And it's like a nobody. It's not like his, you know, direct report or anything. It's someone who has nothing in relation, and he's just free to say, hey, you're messing this up. And so that trickles down if you let it, you know, and it's however, you know, the boss, the big man, is able to take direction himself, to be able to follow when he needs to be able to take correction and to have healthy disagreement. That's an incredible thing. And it starts up there. And I've only had 2 interns, but I've tried to encourage them to call me out in the middle of a shoot if they see something like, and not necessarily, and it gets back into healthy disagreement, the ability to say what you're thinking without being a jerk, right? That's not going to create a good atmosphere of collaboration. And so don't say things like, that's a dumb idea, that's stupid. Instead, suggest your own ideas. I'm really big on that personally. I hate being around people who shout down others' ideas. You're not going to collaborate with me for very long. And I'm just not that kind of stupid. This whole idea of the alpha male, it doesn't exist. That's a bullshit paradigm. But I encourage my interns to say, hey, if you're seeing something that I'm missing, say it. And so there's been a number of times, my last intern, Cassie, we've been on set and she'll stop me right before we start rolling. Like, hey, Wes, what about that over there? I'm like, crap. Thank you. Do. And that's easy to do when it's just me and her on set. But when you get to these bigger sets, we had a shoot in November, 30 people on set. And I talked my producer into hiring her to be like a utility. When you shoot VR and 360, you don't have the same traditional roles. Like you don't have a first AC who's going to be there to pull focus. There's nothing to pull when you're on set of a VR shoot. These are open lenses. Like there is no focus. It's full depth of field, and so you have a lot of utility players that slate or manage the extras. And so for her to be on that set and still, as you know, 21, 22-year-old film student, to step up in front of this $1 billion client and say, hey, Wes, this thing is happening over here that needs your attention, or that I think needs to be fixed. That's such a hard thing to do. And I have so much respect for people who can speak up to their superiors. And not that that's that situation, but it's hard to tell your boss you're screwing up. Here's how you can do it better. I don't know. I just have a lot of respect for Netflix after reading that book, and I'll put it in the show notes. So if you haven't read it or like me heard it, you can, you know, take a peek and see what I'm talking about. But it's pretty profound, and it made me want to work with Netflix so much more. And I already do. Like, I know we've, you know, crack jokes at their expense here and there. But I have such a profound respect for what they do, especially after reading that book. And I don't know, do you feel like your work environments kind of encourage that sort of dissent?
So, I mean, yeah. So my work is a little bit unique where I work, but yes, in a way for sure. But I think that people typically stay in their lane. They're like, this is what I know and understand, so this is what I feel comfortable mentioning or talking about. With the exception of people in the video space within my company, all of them feel like they can make suggestions, that they can say this doesn't work or whatever. And it's happened. And I've had writers at the end of edits see something that we didn't see, and they call it out, and that's great. But I've never been in a room, at least in my where I work. I've never been in a room where people didn't feel like they could speak up or say something, right? Usually though, when it's in a creative space and we're trying to come up with an idea for a commercial or something, or a pitch, it will be okay. If you're going to say you don't like something, you better have something better, right? Don't just speak up. Then that's the thing. It's like, unless you're creative enough to come up with a replacement, don't say this thing is shitty, right? I want to hear something better, not just you don't like it. So, and that's the thing. It's like, not everybody is creative enough to give a replacement for something. They're just saying what I'm saying is, that's the danger of just, allowing people to just say, I don't like something. Well, okay, well, what would you like, in its place? What's better than that? It's easy to tear something down. It's harder to build something back up. So that's awesome that Netflix has that. And because people are working at a company like that, where they're constantly making content all the time, everybody has to kind of be on their A game when it comes to creativity, when it comes to what they know they like and what they know they don't like. And that's really cool when you have a big group of people who knows that and is not afraid. They're not afraid that they're going to lose their job. Because 90% of the time, if you're on a set, you've been on these big sets, obviously, that if there's a light that needs to be moved, you're not going to touch that light. It is not your job. And if you do it, you're effectively saying that the gaffer doesn't need to be doing it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You stay in your lane.
Yeah.
And so to have a culture where you can actually do that, where you can actually say, I don't like this idea because of blah, 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 is pretty awesome, because it negates all of that concern. It allows you to, like you said, to be free and open up and say what you really think, offer a better solution. But you have to have those types of people, those top tier people that can do that, not just shoot something down, but give a better solution.
That's so on point, man.
I've had that, but not to this extent. This extent is, millions of dollars and probably hundreds of people's jobs on the line, of like, is this going to get made or not? To be honest. So much higher stakes, but how cool would that be? If you went into a job, if you got a job and your boss came to you and said, listen, unless you like break the law, I'm not going to fire you. You will not be fired unless you go to jail or convicted of something.
Right.
How free do you feel to speak your mind? Because 90% of the time people aren't going to say, I don't like something. You're not going to tell your boss you don't like something because you're afraid that he's going to be pissed at you and that you're going to eventually lose your job if you do it enough. Maybe not that time, but maybe the 10th time. Right? But if I'm bringing you on and I'm hiring you, it's because I know what I'm going to get from you. And what I'm going to get from you is honesty, clarity, and your own vision. Be able to convey your own vision. If I know I'm getting that from you, that's why I'm hiring you. I don't give a shit that you don't like my idea. What I care about is your idea. Like, that's cool. That's why I like companies like Tesla, who hire like they hire. And I like companies, like Apple, who hire like they hire. I mean, it's just, you hire the person for what they bring, not for what you expect them to bring. Because how could you know? How could you know? It's so cool. It's so cool that they do that.
I love it. I highly recommend the book. There's so many good anecdotes, and it's not just told from Netflix's perspective. He gave free reign to the author, Erin, and she interviewed employees, ex-employees, to hear about their experience and are they living up to their values? How do these things impact you? Like they have a no vacation policy where
Wow.
you take as much time as you want, right? Which could lead to a no vacation policy where no one just takes vacation, right? And so he makes it a point to tell his managers and his big staff, go on vacations, make sure you take your vacations, make sure you talk about it, make sure you're asking how your employees' vacations are going and what they're doing, make sure they're taking time for themselves. And it's a way to make sure you don't abuse that power. And so they have just tons of these. And it's really profound and encouraging. It's a new way to go about your work, and to be challenged if you're running your own company. There's more than one way to go about it. So yeah.
Wow, very cool.
Super cool. What are we gonna cover today, man?
Today we are covering The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you haven't seen it, please pause this episode and go watch it. I believe it's streaming on HBO. Is that correct? Yes, you should be able to see it.
For sure. We'll talk about a few things. We'll look at some of the cinematographer, their framing decisions, some of their production design. We'll also look at the story and writing, the way they hide exposition in plain sight, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
A quick synopsis of the film. Mere seconds before the Earth is to be demolished by an alien construction crew, Arthur Dent is swept off the planet by his friend Ford Prefect, a researcher penning a new edition of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Directed by Garth Jennings, screenplay by Douglas Adams and Karey Kirkpatrick, based on the book by Douglas Adams, cinematography by Igor Jadue-Lillo, sure, why not, starring Martin Freeman as Arthur Dent, Zooey Deschanel as Trillian, Sam Rockwell as Zaphod Beeblebrox, Yasiin Bey, Mos Def, as Ford Prefect, and Stephen Fry as the narrator.
Many millions of years ago, a race of hyper-intelligent, pan-dimensional beings got so fed up with the constant bickering about the meaning of life that they commissioned two of their brightest and best to design and build a stupendous supercomputer to calculate the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Oh, deep thought. We want you to tell us the answer.
The answer to what?
The answer to life, the universe, everything. We'd really like an answer. Something simple.
I have to think about that. Return to this place in exactly 7.5 million years.
Is it finished? Oh, no, there's more. There's more. They go back.
What, 7.5 million years later?
That's right. They do.
Deep thought. Do you have
An answer for you? Yes, but you're not going to like it.
Doesn't matter, we must know it.
All right. The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42.
42?
Yes, I thought it over quite thoroughly. It is, it's 42. It would have been simpler, of course, to have known what the actual question was.
But it was the question. The ultimate question. Of everything.
That's not a question. Only when you know the question will you know what the answer means.
Give us the ultimate question, then.
I can't. But there is one who can. A computer that will calculate the ultimate question. A computer of such infinite complexity that life itself will form part of its operational matrix. And you yourselves shall take on new, more primitive forms and go down into the computer to navigate its 10-million-year program. I shall design this computer for you, and it shall be called...
So, how does it feel to be living in a 10 million year working computer?
For the time being, until we're eradicated for a
Hyper Expressway,
Galactic Highway. Yeah, I love this movie. I love how the lightheartedness of this, like the serious aspects, where it all matters but none of it does, kind of feel. It's fun. You have no idea what's coming next if you haven't seen it before, and how they give explanations for things, but they're totally crazy explanations. But you sit there and think, well, why not? They're able to do that. It's just really, really fun. There are moments where it just feels a little chaotic just for the sake of being chaotic. But even then, I really like it a lot. And there's so much that is unique to it. The shovels when they're walking on the on the planet where they're trying to get the
they're trying to rescue Trillian.
Thank you. Trying to rescue Trillian. And the shovels that hit him, I laughed so hard, and so did Simon. Simon laughed as soon as it happened, he just burst out laughing, and then every time it happened, he burst out laughing again. Those kinds of little things were just so much fun. And the helmet with the lemons for Zaphod, it was just so cool. Why not? Right? Who cares? His brain is powered by lemons. Why not? Yeah, I thought it was really fun. I thought it held up really well too. And it's so easy to kind of go in something like this to go down not a religious path, but like a kind of a path that's been explained or known or suggested before, whether that's religious or not, just otherworldly. And they don't do that at all. They don't really give you any kind of idea that any religion is correct, or that there is or is not a God even. It's more just about here's a random, because I feel like we learn something new every day, right? Scientifically, it feels that way. We're just constantly learning new things. And so we're pushing away what we understand is to be true a little bit at a time. And if you were to, 50 or 100 years ago, if we were to tell people what we know now, it would feel like this in a way, right? It would feel like, wait a minute, what the dolphins are the
second most,
second most in the smartest, or yes, and it just kind of feels like that. So maybe in 100 years or 200 years, we might feel the same, about if somebody 200 years in the future were to tell us what they know then, it would feel kind of similar to this. So why not? Why not make dolphins the second most? Yeah. So I don't know. I enjoyed it. I don't think that it's something that I'll watch a ton. I've seen it probably. I think this is the fourth time I've seen this movie, to be honest, just because it's been around for a while. And every now and then when I want, if I see it, I'll think, oh my gosh, yeah, I want to see that. I forgot about all the things that happened. I'll go back and watch it, and I'll remember as I'm remembering what happens. And I'm brought back to that time of discovery, right? I always like seeing someone's view of the universe, and the more chaotic and crazy, the better, because we have so little idea about any of it that why not, kind of thing. Anyway, what did you think of it?
Yeah.
How many times have you seen this movie?
Not that many, actually.
Okay.
This is probably my third time watching it, because I saw it in theater, and that was after I'd read the book. So I came across the idea of this book and 42 through a website a long time ago, maybe even 2002, 2003. I ran across this website called Planet 42, and they did a bunch of reviews of random things all over the place. But they had an entertainment section, so a lot of music and film reviews. And I was looking up, I think, the latest Jay-Z album, and that's how I found their site. And I commented on the site, disagreeing with someone in there, and it turned into, I guess, a debate internally with the site runners. And so one of the author of the article, who I agreed with, reached out to me and said, "Hey man, I just want to confirm that you're a real person, because I'm getting accused of having made another account in order to put up this other opinion that agrees with me." And I was like, no, man, like, I, love hip hop, blah, blah, blah. And so he's like, "Cool. Would you be interested in writing, for us?" And so I started writing for them. And at one point I was talking with the site owner. And at this point in time, I think we were just about to cross into like the top 1,000 websites on Alexa, which is a really big deal. So again, this is like early mid 2000s. And that was a huge deal, and he was starting to make money. And so I was asking him, like, why Planet 42? What does that mean? Because it didn't make it. He's like, "I'm not going to tell you why, but go read this book." And me, I'm like, challenge accepted. I'll read a freaking book to get one tiny answer. And I did. I went and read, Douglas Adams, and just to, I guess, finish that story, he ended up going on quitting his job. He was an engineer, quitting his job and going on a round trip around the world. He spent a year going around the planet, exploring every country, and he kept a blog, and I read it, but the site ultimately failed because he wasn't, running it anymore. And so I probably defunct. I doubt there's anything there now. But I read the book, and of course was just crazy about it. And when the movie came out, I definitely saw it first in line, and I enjoyed it. I think the books, and this is such a, I don't know, normal cliche thing. Of course the book is better. There's certain jokes that work better on the page than they do on the screen. And that doesn't mean that the movie doesn't work. I think it does. You certainly have to be in the mood for silliness. I think silliness through a punchy phrase in text lands a lot stronger than it does. And so you don't really have to be in the mood to read comedy. I think it'll just come out. Whereas you kind of have to be in the mood to enjoy this kind of movie, because it's one big dad joke. Like, it's a movie filled with dad jokes. and that's great. Like, it's fun. And I enjoy it. And I think the last time I went to watch it, which wasn't that long ago, I think I watched it like within the past year. I felt a little let down. I was like, man, I just remember enjoying this more. Whereas I went to watch it this morning, in prep for the show, and I went in expecting silliness, and I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I had a really good time. And so it's very much you go in with the right mindset, you'll get a lot out of it. You can't go in with the expectation of whatever Silicon Valley or whatever, this kind of super high-minded humor. There is some high-minded stuff going on in here for sure, but it's always, delivered in this very kind of low wit, punch. And it's a good combination, because we're traveling the galaxy and learning about the origins of humanity, and it's all for the sake of a really ridiculous punchline, right? Like, we're here to answer someone's really poorly phrased question when they're trying to get the answer for life, the universe, and everything. And the result is 42. It's like, well, you didn't answer. You didn't ask me the right question. And so
a question at all.
It's not even a question. And so we made humanity, our whole origins is on a farce, basically. And which, as you say, like, it's as good a reason as any to come up with an origin story for us. And so I like it. I think one of the things that really excited me about it wasn't because I was so in love with the book, which has inspired so many things. The Babelfish has kind of become this catch-all thing of an idea of a universal translator. Deep Thought is now a real computer, right? And it really does artificial intelligence minded, computations. And this is just inspired so many people with some of its ideas, which is why I say that it does have a lot of high-minded concepts that are, very old. Like, I can't remember when this book was written, maybe the 70s. It's, very visionary in a lot of ways. And I love that, you know, it kind of amounts to a fart joke in that sense of, yeah, we're going to really explore the ideas of artificial beings, and, you know, do it with a toot. Like, it's what? And so it works for me. I really enjoy it. Like, it's fun. There's some really good punchlines that are visual, purely visual, whenever they're about to get sucked out in space and they're watching the door as the countdown ensues, and then we're waiting for the wall to open up to suck them out. You know, there's a trap door beneath them and they just kind of fall through the floor. That's a really fun, simple, easy visual punchline, and I have a lot of respect for that because it's a perfect buildup of all our focus is on one thing, and then they exit the screen in a completely different way. And it's just these little simple, I don't know, jokes that work for me. Oh, but the thing that really excited me about this movie, I didn't even say it, was Mos Def. At the time, he was still going by Mos Def instead of Yasiin Bey. And he was a very serious hip hop artist, a lyricist. And whenever I found out he was getting into acting, I think I want to say before this came out, he was in Something the Lord Made, which was an HBO movie, it's a fantastic film, with Alan Rickman as well. So this is their second film together. And I saw him in this serious movie and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It's Mos Def. Like, he's a serious dude. When I heard he was getting cast in this movie, I was like, I don't know what to think of this. I'm really excited because it means usually if you want to be taken seriously as an actor, you do dramatic roles. You do, oh, I'm going to do this highly dramatic thing. And I think for Mos Def, he came at it from the perspective of, I want to be taken seriously as an actor, so I need to be doing something that's completely contrasting to my public image of this serious, thoughtful person. So I'm going to be a ridiculous, silly alien, and I'm going to play to that. And so it kind of spun my mind to think about there's another way to go about being taken seriously as an actor. And this came out before I was even acting. And I was just really inspired by that decision to say, I'm going to do something that's the complete opposite of, you know, good hip hop. I'm going to do a space farce with a guy with two heads, and, you know, where we travel across space through an improbability machine. It's just such a really cool, inspired idea. And I just have so much respect for him for doing that. And that was what really pulled me into the film, was just to watch Mos Def do his thing. And I think he's an excellent actor. And I've watched a number of movies just to watch him, like 16 Blocks and some other stuff. Anyway. Yeah, this really worked for me. And it works for me the more I go in expecting to just be silly and have a silly time, and to see stop motion yarn characters vomiting yarn. Like,
so good.
One thing that really annoyed me was the opening, in a good way. Like, it opens on this big song, right? So long and thanks for all the fish. And it's so frustrating because it's so catchy, and I've had it in my head ever since. Like, it just kind of keeps running through my head. I'm like, damn it, that's such a stupid song, and it's so good. Were there any like moments or punchlines that really stuck for you?
I mean, I wouldn't say there were any specifically that I really, no, not really. It's kind of like the sum of the parts is what it feels like for this, where there's not one moment that's like stronger than another for me. It's more of a, what the heck was that kind of thing. Where did that come from? Or where did that come from? I liked the 42. That was I guess the biggest thing for me. But even that, you know, it could have been anything. And that's, I guess, the point.
Yeah.
But if Simon said something interesting, I'm 42. So basically, I'm the meaning of life. Dad is the meaning of life. No, I really enjoyed the at the end, the traveling through in the, I guess, the cart or whatever they're in, where they're traveling past the new Earth that's being built and all the other planets and all of creation, and they're just traveling through it. And I just thought it was so beautiful, and it's such a great payoff for all the other, like the dirtiness and stuff from the rest of the film, where everything is just kind of like, the whole universe is in shambles. They're destroying worlds to make highways. They're in this like really dirty ship. And then, I mean, even in the clean ship, you've got like this robot that's really sad, and this guy who's got two heads, and then they go to this terrible world, and his small head gets stolen, and it's like weird. It's just so weird. And then we get this beautiful journey for, a good long while. I think it's like good 5 minutes or so, where we're just like traveling through this beautiful creation. So that stuck with me for sure. The whole mouse thing at the end was like, I don't know, it was cool and interesting, but it was just kind of just a way to end it, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. So I think I would say 42, and then the traveling through creation.
Nice. Yeah.
For me.
That is a really fun moment. And it challenges a lot of your ideas about, I don't know, not just origins and the possibilities of that, but, maybe adds to the idea that what you could create anything. We'll talk about it at the very end of the episode, but there's a lot of layers in this story, actually, right? You have Arthur Dent. When we open, his house is about to be destroyed because human beings are being careless with his property, and they want to create a bypass. And why do you need to create this bypass? Because you need bypasses. Like, that's the answer is itself, self-evident, or is supposed to be. And so maybe in that way, life, the meaning and the answer to life is self-evident and laid bare on his face as well. The life is its own purpose and meaning. And so Ford Prefect shows up, which I believe is the name of a car. And that's the point of that, right? Is he doesn't know any better, how humans work. But Ford, of course, shows up, and he's aware that the Earth is also going to be destroyed, because of a highway. And the highway is only being made because, Zaphod, Beeblebrox, thought someone wanted his autograph, and so love and kisses, which is a pretty good punchline.
So good.
And it is pointing to the absurdity of creation itself, the absurdity of life and existence, and the idea that it could be gone in an instant. And we touched on this a little bit last week. A gamma ray explosion could come from an exploding star, and we would never know it. We would just cease to exist. And that's it. That's all the chips. And so the idea that they're exploring these inane, stupid ways to destroy the Earth and stupid reasons to destroy the Earth makes a lot of sense. And maybe in some ways, with today's context, you could add on more meaning to that with how meaningless it is that we're destroying our planet, and superficial, stupid ways as well, right? We're building more roads and destroying trees, and there's a lot of ideas you could, and I don't know if that was Douglas Adams' purpose in writing the book. I don't think I've gotten that deep. But I am glad he got to work on the screenplay before he died. He died in 2001, and this came out several years later. So it sucks that he wasn't on set. I think there's an older version of this movie. Mm-hmm. I've never seen it.
Early 80s.
Yeah. Obviously, we're talking about the 2005 version, if you haven't caught on by now. Yeah. If so, welcome back. But I love the idea that, a lot of this came out of his mind, and I don't know where to parse that. What was his idea? What wasn't? I do wish there was a couple things that they had done a little bit better job at. In the book, they make it a bigger deal about the towels. And I don't feel like they really expressed that very well in the film, the importance of a towel. And I certainly couldn't explain it. It's just too silly for me to remember,
I mean, they say it like Mos Def's character says it, but several times, 2 or 3 times, but there's not really a cost for not having it that I remember.
Yeah, no, there's definitely no cost for it.
Okay.
But just the life and death importance of it is, I think, stressed a little bit more in the book. And yet, I mean, there's still good payoffs, right? He starts chasing the Vogons around and they start yelling, "Oh, he's got a towel, run away." Stuff like that. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good Monty, Python humor. And this is certainly of that era. And yeah, I don't know. I'll touch on a few things and see what pops out. Cinematography wise, lots of mediums and wides, right? Not a lot of dramatic angles. They do a lot of center framing. Now that doesn't mean that everything is perfectly framed in the center, like a Wes Anderson film, but instead they keep everything towards the center so that you don't have to travel your eye around the screen a lot. You're kind of just always in that same little box there in the center. And that makes the story a lot easier to follow. The communication gets a lot clearer. And you're not going to miss a lot of other stuff. It makes it a very friendly viewing experience, so that you don't feel exhausted. Instead, you're just kind of right there with the jokes, with the characters the entire time. This movie is not here to challenge you. It's here to kind of bring you along. And then sometimes their two shots even are staged very closely. Like there's a lot of shots with Trillian and Arthur together where they're either shoulder to shoulder, literally touching shoulders, or there's at least one shot that I noticed when they're actually stacked on top of each other. And it's not awkward at all. You're just kind of watching, and of course it makes sense. They're just standing by each other, but they're actually like her back is right on top of his chest. Like they are literally touching, one after another stacked, just so that they can put their faces closer together in the middle of the frame so that they can get that much closer, so that it's a two shot, but it's like a close-up two shot. And they do this a lot throughout the film to just, again, make it an easier viewing experience and to keep you there, right there with them. And that's comedies in general kind of tend to this kind of easier viewing experience. That's why it's, very well lit. It's a lot of bright lighting, not usually very dramatic in their lighting, which is good for comedy. It's very safe. And they do a lot in their production design, right? The clean areas are very clean, right? The bulbous, round, clean white things, right? Marvin's head, even the missiles that are chasing them around had this huge ball in the middle so that it doesn't look very dangerous. It's kind of friendly, even though it's there to kill them. Their spaceships are very round and bulbous. And it's almost planet-like. Like you have this visual idea of a planet that's just kind of embedded throughout the story, as opposed to the Vogons, right? Their architecture is the complete opposite. It's hard, straight edge, dark, eroded, slimy kind of texture. And that plays very well into the story and writing side of things, where Vogons themselves are metaphors, of course, for bureaucrats, right? Kafka would love this story because it's all tied up into bureaucracy and bad politics. We need to pursue them. Bring me the request to pursue fugitive form. And let's get on that. Oh, I'm going to pursue them myself. Oh, lunch break, back in an hour. I think I'm going to have soup today. Like it's just perfectly emblematic of, bureaucrats being just tedious and not at all what you want out of people who are supposed to be serving the public interest. It's all about, bureaucracy. Hermes Conrad, Futurama, right? Like I triple stamped this form. And of course the Vogons themselves come from a planet, Vogosphere, where thinking is punished. The swatting that you were talking about earlier, right? They're getting punished literally. They're getting punished literally for having thoughts, for having a philosophical idea. You get punished for that on their planet, and they're just making both a joke at their experience and also, creating a backstory for them. This is why they act the way they do. They were taught to never think for themselves and to just kind of follow the rules and follow the orders. Don't step outside the boundaries. And I love that little flourish on their planet. It's such a brilliant little detail. One of the other things I really love is the way they hide exposition in plain sight. right? The Hitchhiker's Guide itself is a big expositional gag. And there's a lot of ways to view gags. And we were talking about this before we hit record. Like, gag itself on set can mean a number of things. If you are doing a horror movie and someone gets their head decapitated, that's called a gag. If you're on set, you're calling that a gag. It's just a visual element that you're trying to execute. And so if you are doing a joke gag, it's really no different terminology wise. But, more stepping back a little more, less literal set talk. The guide itself is this big expositional punchline where we're going to get you up to speed. Here's what the spaceship is, the improbability machine or whatever it's called. And they're going to tell you what it is and how it operates. And they're going to make a joke about engineers as the final flourish, because they never get invited to those kinds of parties. And so they're just going to give you the exposition through a joke, and it makes, the medicine go down, so to speak. It's an easier way to kind of lay out, here's the necessary bits of information. And if you do it with a laugh, then it doesn't feel boring or tedious. Instead, it's really fun and you're learning and it's fun. Everyone wins. But I also really like the perspective gun, because once again, hiding exposition in plain sight, we're literally going to tell you what someone is thinking through another character. So the character doesn't do their own exposition. Someone else does it for them. And again, it's through a punchline. This is now funny. So it allows for some really fun story elements. And for me, the one real emotional moment in the film was this brilliant expositional and emotional moment where you're having Trillian's thoughts voiced by Zaphod. And so you're hearing Zaphod at a certain point. We cut away from Zaphod and we're watching Trillian as we're hearing her thoughts voiced through someone else about, her planet being destroyed, and that the only person that she can relate to, she's alienated. I don't remember, but it's this great little, we just hang on her and slowly start to push and push and push. And we never get super close. But that little sliding element, that tracking in, allows for some drama to be added to that, because we don't have a lot of that throughout this movie. It's very either static or the camera swinging around wildly, but we don't have a lot of these perfectly locked off dolly shots. And having that in that emotional moment with her performance, it's just all perfectly tied together. They explained what the perspective gun does. We see how it works several times. And then we finally get to use all that knowledge that you've given the audience for an emotional delivery. It's a really well executed little moment that I learned a lot from. And then, of course, the Marvin gets shot in the head later, which is another holy crap. Marvin's gigantic head just got lambasted with a laser. They finally managed to hit something. And of course, it's right after he makes a joke about how they're such terrible shots, which we were all thinking man, they're firing a lot and no one's getting hit. And so for him to voice that and then immediately get shot is a really good irony and juxtaposition. But of course, he, wakes back up, grabs a perspective gun, and his depression infects everyone. And I love it because the perspective gun now gets to save their lives. And it's by forcing bureaucrats to feel his pain. All these emotionless, tedious pieces of crap actually feel something now, and they're just completely incapacitated through the experience. It's pretty cool. My only last little thought is Arthur is the quote unquote the straight man, right? He's the one person in this whole film that is he's got no backbone, of course. He's not adventurous. He's not very silly. He's reluctant. And all those elements allow the comedy to play in contrast to him, because a lot of the time the joke is on him, whether it's his planet, his house, getting sucked into space. It's all through his confusion. And in that way, maybe he's also the advocate or the voice of the audience as we're trying to get understanding about the universe and life and everything. And so that's a good use of a straight man character. And I put that in quotes, straight man, even though this you could certainly make a good argument that this movie is straight man humor. But yeah, he's kind of the level-headed, confused bloke that's traveling through this that we get to kind of empathize with in order to allow all these colorful characters to bounce around the walls, and gives us something to identify with, I guess.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome, man. Great insight. I also love how they destroyed the Earth. It was really interesting. You have these Star Wars moments where, the Star Wars version where you have the one big ship that shoots a ray that explodes the planet. In this case, it's a bunch of these little things that are surrounding the Earth, and all of a sudden it's just disintegrated. It's just another interesting way to do that I hadn't seen before, to basically incinerate an entire planet instantaneously with all these other little things. And how they introduce what it is pretty cool too, where they start at his thumb and they just slowly start cutting back, and you even see a plane flying, I think, next to one of the pillars and I just started thinking, like, oh my gosh, to be in that plane when that happens, I wonder if that plane also got destroyed, and if not, then what happens to the plane? It probably was destroyed, but
and I wonder,
it was just
through that, like that sequence that you're talking about, that big pull out reveal, I feel like that would be a great cheap way to execute that visually, instead of having to render 500 visual effects frames. Instead, you get to render like Photoshop photorealistic stills one after another, and you just only need to get this one still perfectly instead of make this perfect transition and get all the lighting shifts exactly right. Much easier to execute by that kind of punchy still frame pull out. I thought that was a brilliant little flourish for sure.
Agreed. I was gonna say something else too about the I forgot. I lost it. I had something else and I lost it. But yeah, I loved that, how they introduced that, and it's really cool. And then I think the next thing that happens is the title sequence, where they show the book, it opens up and it kind of explains a little bit more. I loved the narration throughout this whole thing. And one of the things that I also loved that we don't really have, that's what I was going to say. I feel like in movies now, everything is too clean. Like, do you feel this way? When you watch movies and you think, okay, why, they'll either remake an idea or something, or just in general, everything is 4K, 8K, 48K, whatever, all the Ks. And it's so clean. It's almost too clean. And I watch this and, it has to have been shot on film. It has to have been.
Yeah.
It's so grainy and raw that it just has to. But it has this like human breathing element about it that I love, that I miss in so many films now. So many films are so polished and so clean. Like when I look at something and I'm using my eyes, rarely do I see anything like super crisp and clear. It's not because I have bad vision. It's because I can really only focus on your face right now, and everything else is blurry, right? But even your face, right? I can't just focus on your face. My eyes are constantly moving. They're moving to your nose, to your eyes, to your beard, to the microphone, to the things that are around. So I'm never really focused on anything. So all of these so watching a movie like this where it's really grainy and some things are out of focus when they should be in focus at times, it actually feels more real. It feels more like an experience that not that I would have necessarily, but that, that I could possibly see having, right? Because it just feels more real. And I miss that in movies now. And I love digital. Don't get me wrong. I'm not shitting on digital at all. but I really like this. I really like that feel of it being dirty, or even in the beautiful parts, because even beauty in real life has some dirty element to it. Or has some kind of like it's never perfect. Nothing is ever perfect. And so I really enjoyed that. I think if they were going to remake this movie again, right now, it would be bad no matter what. Even if the performances were better, the writing was better, I would probably not like it as much if it was like 8K or what, IMAX perfect, it would need to be on film. I don't know, just an observation that I had that I wanted to say. I think for some reason watching this, I felt that more than most other films. I'm not sure why.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, it does irritate me actually, like all these very crisp, perfect images. And sometimes I'm watching a show even, and you can see like really bad makeup. And
yes, because it's so clear. Good point.
It's so clear, and it drives me nuts. And I'm just like, these actors have on this caked orange makeup on their face, and they don't look like human beings. They look like actors on a stage, and it's not supposed to. This is supposed to be a drama, and it just irritates me to no end. But even the films, that don't do that, it feels fake. There is a separation that it creates between me and the film, because I think you said it really well. Like, vision isn't this perfect thing. It's not a perfect clarity of the entire thing. And there's reasons to do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't have very deep depth of field shots or anything like that, but there is something to be said for finding a happy medium of how can we create some human elements in order to keep you grounded, keep you pulled in. And if there is a time to do it, I guess comedies are a good reason to have these deeper pulls of focus. But I don't know. I agree. There is something about 8K, and you're just kind of going overboard at a certain point. And it's just technology for itself, because to some degree, I can only resolve so much at certain distances. Unless you're creating VR content, you don't really need 8K stuff, right? 10 feet away, 20 feet away, you're not going to notice the difference at a certain point. And it just starts to become a weird arms race. And to me, it comes across a little bit masturbatory. It's just, you're doing it for your own pleasure at a certain point. So I agree with everything you said, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. And then the practicals that they do, the practical effects that they do, what are I'm terrible with names. The bad guys.
The Vogons. Yeah.
The Vogons. So good. Like it harkens back to the first Star Wars, right? Where they built everything, and it was a real, it just felt like humans were creating this rather than computers. And obviously there's a ton of special effects, and I have no problem with special effects at all. But anytime you can build something, it's always better that you can create something for real and then film it. It's always better. And I think that any filmmaker knows that. I mean, when we had our Blade Runner 2042 episode, think they spoke to the same thing. It's like, yes, let's try to build all of this for real and film that. And I love that they did that as much as possible in this film. It didn't try to like CGI their way out of things. It's so cool. Vogons were amazing.
Yeah, completely agree. And I feel like if no one else, I'm willing to bet that was something Douglas Adams would have insisted on. If it's going to be funny, it has to be real. And no better time to make a real crazy looking, pig-nosed monster thing than making it real, making it a real tangible thing where its lips move funny and and it's reciting bad poetry. Like you want that to be tangible, because if it's not, the humor gets lost through that
Ooh, that was a good one.
Translation.
Oh yeah.
Good point, man.
Anyway.
Nice. So what are you going to recommend this week?
Oh, okay. So I'm going to go completely off center. A film that on my birthday, I wanted to go see a movie. And because that's what I want to do on my birthday. And so I took the kids to see Sing 2. And I know this is like totally off, has nothing to do with Hitchhiker's Guide, obviously, but it's so good. It is so good. I absolutely recommend it. I loved it. The first one is like, okay, whatever. This one though took it to a whole nother level. It's so good. I'm not even going to tell you why. But I just loved it. And I've talked to a couple of people since then who have actually brought it up to me. Like, hey, have you seen Sing 2 yet? I said, yeah, I did. It's so good, right? They're like, it was amazingly good, like surprisingly. Because I'm 42. I'm not going to go see, like a bunch of animated movies in the theater unless I have kids. And so brought my kids, and Jenny went, and a family, a couple of his friends came, and really, really fun and good. And I think the message about it is really awesome, which is your path is not always going to be easy. In fact, that, as Kobe said once, that is the dream. The waking up early with no one believing in you, doing it anyway, fighting through adversity, that's the dream, not the destination. And this is just a great example of that. Mr. Moon in this movie is fantastic. It just, nothing is diverting him. It's just really, really good. I recommend it highly.
Other than the title, I know nothing about that movie, and so Mr. Moon.
You haven't seen the first one?
No, like saying okay. Mr. Moon is the perfect. It is just like hilarious to me.
Yeah, I know.
Nice. I'll check that out. All right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you have to watch the first one to enjoy the second one, but it is a little bit more endearing if you watch the first one first. So just so you know. Anyway.
Nicely done.
Yeah, I know.
I was on the fence because I wanted to recommend Archive 81.
Okay.
To support my guys, but after getting through the middle of the episode, I want to recommend something the Lord made. Like if you want to watch Alan Rickman and Mos Def melt your face off in a very simple little drama set in the 40s, I think you'll really enjoy it. It's a beautiful movie, and I really couldn't recommend it enough. It's about doctors who are trying to figure out how to save babies. And Mos Def, being a black man in the 40s, has a lot to fight and overcome in order to be taken seriously as a doctor. And so there's a lot of really good performances, good messaging, and it's very thoughtful. So highly recommend that. Check that out. I'll have both trailers in the show notes, and stay tuned for next week. We're going to take a look at Get Out. I hear that's a movie that the kids love, and so
all the kids are watching nowadays.
And so we'll take a look at that guy, and see what's going on with that. I hear it's about something. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, subscribe, review us on iTunes, leave us a note if you'd like us to cover a film, or hear Todd's kids. We'll do it all. Yeah. Is he making a request right now?
Is what it is. What are you going to do?
What you're going to do. If you want to leave a note on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
And our quote of the day is from Robert Burns, and this is paraphrased. Oh, would some power give us the gift to see ourselves as others see us? Did I read that wrong?
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
And so Robert Burns is an old Scottish poet. And he's quoted in the movie because there's this little phrase, what do they say? The best laid plans of mice and men.
Oh, yes.
And that's from his poem. And that poem is about a mouse who builds a nest. And then this man is trying to plow his field, comes through and destroys his home. And so he writes this poem as an apology to the mouse, and he feels horrible about it. And so, of course, the movie quoting that is no, coincidence, I'm sure, because this whole movie is about people who plow through someone's house, someone's planet, and the consequences thereof. I don't think he gets quite as good of an apology, because ultimately the mice in this case, right, which is why he made the mice, our big Carey, it's reflective of the poem, and the mice at the end go to take his brain. Not a very good apology, but of course we do a lot of rough things to mice, to say the least, and I don't think we do a very good a job of apologizing to them. So maybe it's well earned. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not the one to advocate for any of that, but I just thought it was a really interesting choice to I feel like maybe be inspired by the poem in order to write and create this whole world, or to kind of discover that at some point. But Robert Burns is to Scotland as Shakespeare is to England, like very important from what I understand, and I understand shockingly little. But I thought that was pretty cool. And so whenever I was looking up quotes from Robert Burns, I came across that one. I thought that was perfect because it's also describing the perspective gun, right? It's the power to make someone else see from your perspective, which is illuminating you of yourself. And so I thought that was cool.
I mean, I have a few feelings about it. One being, it's very easy. It's very even though we know we're not the center of the universe, it's very easy to not forget that, but just to imagine that is actually the case, right? It's because you only have your world to experience. I can't experience the world through you. I can only experience it through myself. So I am the center of the universe, right? Mm-hmm. It's very easy to forget that we're probably not, and then to also be okay with that. But then on the flip side of that, there's this aspect of when I'm trying to get out of that, and I'm trying to see your side of the universe, we cannot help but have an egocentric point of view, right? To have this kind of I guess ego is the thing, is the word. It's like, I'm going to see your point of view, but I can't get rid of mine. Mine is always going to be there. And so we're at this constant war of I need to be able to put it aside, to see either someone else's or something else's point of view. The mouse, the dolphin, right? The probable other alien world with intelligent life on it somewhere else. The God aspect, but all of that is surrounding my ego, and it's very hard for us as human beings, and I don't think that we've really learned this, to let go of that, to be able to take in the idea that my ego is nothing. My ego is this thing that I'm holding on to because it's all I've got, right? And if I let go of it, then I am just this speck of nothingness in the universe. This is a great way of saying that, in a way of you have to let go of that in order to see that. But in order to see that, you have to be okay with being very little, with your plans being very little, and the world and the universe as a whole not giving a shit about what your plans are, and that your plans might be wrong, that maybe your plans that you have are incorrect and can be altered and changed to whatever the correct one is, if there is a correct one, right? And there's probably not a correct one. There's just a different one. And look, I'm saying this, and at the same time, I have my plans. I have my goals. I have things I want to do and where I want to go and where I want to be, but they might be not good for me or not good for people around me. And, they might change if I kind of let go of this ego. So anyway, it's it's a quote that really speaks to me because I've been trying to work on that myself. And I know that you constantly work on that. I mean, I can tell we haven't really talked about that, outside of this podcast, but I've been able, I think that's one of the reasons I identify with you and why we're friends, because I see that kind of thing in you. And when I see that kind of thing in other people, I really gravitate towards that because it makes me it's a similar journey I'm on, and it makes me want to be a better person too, and be more open and inclusive, and kind of like chill out about what I think is the best way forward. Like chill out, I don't really know.
Right.
I have said it before. I just do shit. Right? I just do shit. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I just, so anyway, this is a great quote. Very, very fun. I could talk about that in a whole episode, I feel like.
Yeah. So if there was like an inverted perspective gun, where you would see what others see when they look at you, would you want that? Would you want to see what others see?
I would. Oh, I think I would. I'm not saying that it would change me. It might. But it would definitely open my eyes to some things that I'm probably not seeing. Because I have this little, I'm like any other person. I have this little tiny view of what I am and who I am. But really, I can only tell you what I think that I am in my head. I can't tell you what I think everybody else thinks that I am. I have no idea. But it would be interesting piece of knowledge to know what all of the people around me really think of me. Wow. Because I think, to me, I think I'm driven, I'm focused, but I'm also kind of like wishy-washy. I'm, but what do other people think? Do other people think, oh, he doesn't know what he doesn't know what he wants to do or where he wants to go or be, or do they think the same thing that I do? No idea. I would like to know. I really would. Just because I don't necessarily know the things I'm putting out there. If that makes sense. I know what I hope I'm putting out into the world. Yeah. But I don't really know. Yeah. So anyway, what about you? That's a good question.
God, no. Fuck that.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
And in the story. Play us off, Todd.
Okay. Oh man, now I want to do an episode on that. Okay, we're gonna circle back to that at some point in the next 50 episodes. We're gonna circle back to that. I'm gonna look for those moments in the next few films. Oh, this is a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Wes, for those insights. Really, really informative. I loved it. Make sure to join us next week when we cover Get Out. So watch that before jumping in. And like Wes said, please like and subscribe. It all helps us. Share us with your friends. Review us on iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. It all matters. And if there's a film that you'd like to hear us talk about, break down, we'd love to hear from you. So just let us know. Until then, I am Todd.
I am Wes.
Go watch some movies.